All right, ladies and gentlemen, you already know what's about to happen. It is the first final month. Well, it's the first final day of the month in the year 2026. It is January 31st, and I can't wait to talk about One Piece once again. So, welcome to the first One Piece reflection stream of 2026. Let's begin. Yo, peoples! Kyushu92 here. Welcome to my very first One Piece reflections in the year 2026. We only got 2 chapters of One Piece, so don't expect this to be too long as I just say my piece and then we go ahead and move on with the rest of our day because I have other things that I need to take care of. However, I will not rush today's festivities due to the fact that these chapters that we got, just 2 chapters, were in fact some of the most important chapters that we got in One Piece because they finally bring an end to Harald. We find out what truly happens, and we get reintroduced back to the present day so we can finally deal with Emu basically wreaking havoc up above in the sun world of Elbaf. So let's get started with chapters 1170, Contrary. Now, in this particular chapter, it picks up right after Ragnar basically tries to attack Loki, and it's him not realizing that it's actually the hammer attacking him. And he goes back into the room like, "Hey, who threw this hammer at me? Come out and show yourself." Only to see that the hammer's not there, but he sees the chest where the legendary devil fruit of Elbaf is sitting inside. And he was like, "Well, I might as well go ahead and take it now." But the hammer itself decides, you know what? I am going to break the floor that you're standing on, so you just fall through. Now, Loki, being the agile ancient giant that he is, decides, you know what? I don't want to fall. And he starts jumping from rubble piece to rubble piece until he gets back up there again. Then we cut back to Harald, who has been steadily, basically cutting down all of his own men, with him being basically subsumed by the will of Emu, going, "You waste your time, Loki. That devil fruit is a national treasure. It has lain dormant for centuries, not because no one chose to eat it, but because no one could eat it. Not a single one of them was chosen by Ragnar," meaning that this is possibly one of the oldest devil fruits in the history of One Piece that has only seen possibly one other user. The same way the Hito Hito no Mi model Nika hasn't seen a user since Joy Boy, this legendary devil fruit hasn't seen another user in centuries. Like the amount of time since this devil fruit has been dormant and hasn't been used by anyone could possibly be the same length of time that Joy Boy's devil fruit, the Nika fruit, was basically dormant until it got into the hands of Luffy. So it kind of makes you wonder just how old a devil fruit can really stay, because devil fruits are not normal. Obviously, they give you superpowers. But obviously, devil fruits are not normal, and it makes you wonder how different from actual fruit that they actually are. Sorry, I'm just bringing up the chat here so I can look at the manga page and look at you guys at the same time. One of these days, I'm going to get an upgrade so that way I can have you both on the sides here. And once again, YouTube doesn't want me to see my own people in chat. There we go. So it makes you wonder, okay, so I guess devil fruits don't deteriorate, they don't rot, they just stay as they are until someone bites into them, and then they essentially become useless. But I'm just thinking this devil fruit could be as old as the Nika fruit of Joy Boy's time. Because we don't know how many centuries it's been since anyone has been able to harness its power. It has lain dormant for centuries, not because no one chose to eat it, but because no one could eat it. Not a single one of them was chosen by Ragnar. Now, another thing to take into perspective here is the fact that Ragnar has existed all pretty much as long as this devil fruit has been around. So this makes this hammer, and we find out what it actually is later, one of the oldest living things basically in all of One Piece. Pretty much predating Harald when you think about it. centuries upon centuries it's existed. Now, I wonder about this, about devil fruits of this nature. When it comes to objects gaining the powers of devil fruits, does that essentially mean that they can no longer age? Because objects can just stay as they are indefinitely, especially if cared for, they can just continue to last. So, I wonder how long Ragnir has actually been around. Basically centuries, but I would like a number. But he says, it has lain dormant for centuries, not because no one chose to eat it, but because no one could eat it. Not a single one of them was chosen by Ragnir. And while he's saying this, Loki is being chased by Ragnir as it's threatening to flatten him. But with the strength I now possess. And as he says this, Gabin and Shanks come in and cut his leg clean off. And then Gabin notes, he suffers immense pain from his wounds, and the recovery effect is drastically slowed down. Give him enough consecutive hits and we can manage to knock him out of commission. If these guys have any weakness, it's against those of us who can infuse our attacks with the color of the Supreme King. And then Harald just screams out Gabin's name. You really dare make an enemy out of me? Of course I do. I can't let you roam free in this state of madness. And then we find out that the Roger Pirates really were them. They really were the it people to surpass. With Shanks asking, how do you know the weakness of the Knights of God, Gabin? They came after us several times trying to take you back. And it shows silhouetted members of the God Knights coming across the Roger Pirates in order to, take Shanks back to Garling. We know you have a child with red hair. He must be the son of our commander. Hand the boy over now. Hand the boy over. Each time they did, we beat them black and blue. Like, the mere thought that the Roger Pirates ran into the Holy Knights several times, and they beat them, and they beat these knights who have immort. And mind you, this is Gavin just letting us know that these people who are souped up with the power of Emu, who have immortality, can regenerate, and have an insurmountable amount of strength, were constantly beaten by the Roger Pirates. That's how strong the Roger Pirates actually were. They were so strong that not even people who were essentially immortal and had 10 times the strength they normally did as individuals, they still couldn't beat Roger and anyone from his crew. So if you even thought that Roger and the feats that we saw him accomplish throughout his life, especially during Odin's flashback, his Kamusari, divine departure, him clashing with Whitebeard, and all the other people he's encountered in his life. Remember, this is during the time when Roger hasn't even fully grown into his mustache yet. This is when he started to grow into his mustache. This is a while after, well, actually, it's not too long because Shanks was a baby when he was with the Roger Pirates. So it was probably around the time when he had his mustache. It was still when he was in his prime. This is when Roger was in his prime. Gavin was in his prime. Rayleigh was in his prime. Everyone on the crew of Roger were in their prime. And every single time, the literal strongest members of Marijois, save for Emu and the Elders, every time they tried to roll up on the Roger Pirates, they got folded. See, when we first got introduced to the concept of instantaneous regeneration, I thought it was the most overpowered ability that we would see in One Piece. When we saw the Elders just straight up regenerating back in Egghead, I honestly thought that this would be the most ludicrously overpowered ability in all of One Piece that wasn't, presumably, Devil Fruit related. And I talked about how it's overpowered to have the ability to instantly heal yourself, and it's not related to a Devil Fruit, it just happens automatically. You could have your entire head, your entire body, even parts of your body sliced into and left with gaping wounds, and you would literally regenerate from it as if it never happened to you. At the time, I will admit, I thought that that was one of the most broken abilities to have in One Piece, and you would have to have something substantial in order to combat it. But here we are, many months later, from that single instance when I want to say a year later, after witnessing this first with Saturn after he got stabbed by Bonnie in the Egghead arc, all the way up until now, and learning that the best way to combat someone with supposed immortality is to really just hit them hard with conquerors. That is, hockey transcends all. See, when Kaido said that statement has lived in my head rent-free for years. Ever since I read that in the chapter, it's lived in my head for years. Him saying hockey transcends all has literally been the greatest statement. And then we've been seeing multiple examples of people with powerful hockey actually accomplishing things that you normally would not see. If it isn't being able to touch things without actually having to physically touch them, empowering yourself to the degree where you need to have equals amounts of, what the heck? What is that? Nope, don't like that. Weird. Being able to give yourself even more strength than before, being able to bypass the capabilities of Logia fruits and devil fruit users, and not only that, but later on we would see that hockey is capable of just straight up reversing the effects of devil fruit powers on the user if they focus and channel enough hockey, like was the case with Law. When Law was turned into a woman because of Doc Q's Sick fruit, he basically channeled his hockey and then repelled it. Literally stopped being affected by a devil fruit just by channeling hockey. Now, normally, in many instances, we have seen plenty of devil fruits where it affects the body in ways that is seen to be irreversible unless they are reversed by the user, such as Foxy's slow beam, or Admiral Suru's, what is it? I forget her devil fruit. The one where it's like, where she's capable of stringing up people as if they're clothes and also washing them. Not like Khalifa's soap fruit, but we've seen devil fruits that can alter the human body. Not the body of the user, but the bodies of other people. We've seen this before, but now we're seeing that if your hockey is truly strong enough, you are capable of stopping that from happening. Which means that, let's say for example, Bluno. If your hockey is strong enough, you can literally resist the effects of him turning parts of your body into a door and disorienting you. Let's see, what's another good one? If your hockey is strong enough, the effects of Magellan's poison, if he tries to touch you with it, you could literally resist that too. Because what this is basically telling me is that if your hockey is strong enough, you can just straight up ignore what devil fruits can do. Now, mind you, we've seen this before. We've seen this with Shanks. He showed up in Marineford, saved Kobe, and blocked Akainu with his sword. Mind you, Akainu's fist was turned into magma, which we've seen already be able to just melt objects when he was going to try and kill Luffy, because he saw that Luffy was a far bigger threat than anyone else there at the battlefield at the time. But we see Shanks come in, stop Kobe, save Kobe, and stop Akainu, and nothing happened to his sword. Shanks is still using that sword today. So we've seen more and more examples of how strong hockey is. And then we see it from Kaido, we see it from Big Mom, we see it from Yamato, we see it from Luffy, we see it from everybody. And now we're seeing it to the point where now we're learning that hockey is so strong, it can be honed to such a point that people who can instantly regenerate from injuries you can bypass that. You can literally slow down the regeneration. You can literally injure people who are immune to injury. So when Gabin said, every single time the Holy Knights rolled up on us, we beat them senseless. Every time. It wasn't like, oh, they got us sometimes and we got them sometimes. No, every single time the Holy Knights tried to double back, regroup, rethink their strategy, and then try and go and take Shanks, they got folded every single time. When I say the Roger and his crew were literally the epitome of piracy, now mind you, Rocks was definitely up there. Definitely up there. But we're not talking about Rocks. Roger and his crew during their entire time as an entire crew were literally the epitome of strength when it came to pirates. Now, learning that they basically folded the Holy Knights every single time they showed up just tells me that Luffy and company really need to get to a point of strength where they can be compared to the Roger Pirates. It ain't got nothing to do with Luffy having the same smile as Roger, carrying the same hat as Roger, having the same mindset as Roger. No. Roger's crew is the absolute pirate example to beat. When you are capable of fighting people who can regen from your attacks, and they can't beat you, even when you have that almost supernatural advantage, and you still can't win, and you have multiple knights, and not one of them can win, that means Roger and his crew are some bad people. So Gavin says each time they did, we beat them black and blue. And then Shanks continues with, now that you mention it, I seem to remember that Somers saying something like that, showing that Somers was a part of some of these groups, and he remembers getting his behind handed to him, which is why he remembered Gavin all the way in the present when Gavin showed up and slashed him across the chest. Just some fond memories of the distant past. I was surprised to learn that there was a proper combat force in the Holy Land, though. I assumed those celestial dragons were all chumps. You love Kuma? So do I. So do I. Kuma, okay, this is a tangent. Even though Kuma has nothing to do with this chapter, Kuma is literally one of the greatest characters of One Piece, entirely. He is actually, I want to say he is the most benevolent. The highest statute of benevolence and kindness and passion within One Piece. Ever since we got his backstory, it literally changed to everything I ever thought about him. And now I see him as literally one of the most properly written, one of the greatest written characters of One Piece. He is absolutely amazing. I'm still upset that we don't get a playable Kuma in Pirate Warriors 4, but what's done is done, and I can't do anything about it. But yes, Kuma is indeed one of the best, if not I want to say one of the best, because he's not the absolute best, because there's a lot of people, but Kuma is as well. Kuma is up there as well. And Doflamingo, hello, Julian, it's good to see you. Oh, you love Doflamingo as well? Because Doflamingo got some issues. He's got that Celestial Dragon mentality, and that's literally why the whole arc of Dressrosa went the way it did. I mean, I can't say he's one of the best, because that dude was a dictator, and he smiled while people were in misery, so I can't really say he's one of the best characters. I will say he's one of my favorites, but not one of the best, because that dude was insane. But that's me. But continuing on, also, Julian, we only got 2 chapters to react to, so I'm just going through 1170 right now, talking about everything that's going on, and then the next one. But he is strong? Oh, undoubtedly strong. But given the fact that, but don't let that overshadow the fact that while he may be strong, he still got folded by a teenager. So you can have all this strength all you want. You can posture and everything, saying like how you're literally a god, and you're not, and you got folded by getting punched in the face, and now he in prison. But the thing is, Doflamingo's left such a massive impact on people in the world due to the fact that he is who he is, that even him being in jail, anytime we see Doflamingo's all like, oh snap, it's Doflamingo! Like, that's how you know you truly made an impact as a character, where even if your character is seen in jail, not doing anything, everyone's all like, Doflamingo! I will admit that I get hyped whenever I see Doflamingo because every single time he shows up, he's always saying something interesting. Every single time. That's how you know you made a memorable character. His face could just show up in one panel, him not say anything, and people will zone in on Doflamingo. That's how much of a presence he's left ever since Dressrosa, and Dressrosa has been several years ago. That's how long. Wow, good God, we can say that Dressrosa was several years ago. Wow, we getting older. But continuing, Gavin speaks saying, I was surprised to learn that there was a proper combat force in the Holy Land. Holy Land, though. I assumed those celestial dragons were all chumps. Yeah, they hardly ever come down to our world. They really believe they're gods. Makes me shiver to think of the life I might have had. And then Gavin just goes, yeah, we call that fate. And then Harald gets back up, you still using his one available leg to try and kill both Gavin and Shanks. I want to save Harald somehow, Gavin. Yeah, but you were the one who taught me about the despair of what it means to become a Knight of God. Seems like Loki's our only hope. Then we cut back to Loki, where pretty much one of the most important and unexpected reveals happens. Loki is just fighting the hammer going, I keep telling you, get out of my way, stupid hammer. And both Loki and the hammer are wheezing because they're tired. Does this mean you're supposed to be the guardian of the national treasure? How does a hammer move on its own? What's your deal anyway? Just give it a rest. And when they both go to hit each other, Loki's hammer, the one he's carrying, shatters on Ragnir. And Loki's all like, my hammer! Then the hammer itself falls and turns into a squirrel. Yeah, the hammer turns into a squirrel, and it's just hissing at Loki after a big old knot appears on the front of its hammer face. And then we get back to Harald just slashing away more of his men, just killing them, going, be gone! Then Shanks, how do we end this fight? He's got Supreme King Haki too, that's a first. And then Harald calls out to his guards. No, Jarl calls out to the guards saying, guards, find some way to hold Harald back. You must not let Harald have that devil fruit. And it just shows more and more men being just casually butchered and tossed aside as if they're nothing, as Harald gets closer and closer to the room where this devil fruit is supposed to be. But we cut to unsaid scenes between Ragnir and Loki. Ragnir acknowledges Loki. Loki takes the legendary devil fruit in his hand. Mind you, we can't even see the shape of what this devil fruit looks like, because I'm looking at it, but it's very, very small, and I'm trying to zoom in, and it almost, weirdly enough, if I'm looking at this correctly, and I'm zooming in, I see leaves of the devil fruit, but it also looks... It almost looks like the devil fruit itself is star-shaped? Maybe I'm looking at this incorrectly, but it looks like it's star-shaped. But Loki eats it, and then his body starts transforming. Mind you, we only see it in silhouette form. And then we see him grow into an enormous size, but the only thing we can make out of this figure is literally just his glowing eyes. Ragnir cheering and happy that someone worthy of this particular devil fruit has come by after so many centuries. And then we see what appears to be possibly stubby legs of Loki as he's making his way into where Harald is. And we are seeing everything from Loki's perspective because his true form, his devil fruit form, whatever this thing is, we still haven't seen yet. So all these next panels, bit my tongue again. All of these next panels is just simply from Loki's perspective. And we see the Harald surrounded by a room of fire with a whole bunch of dead guards around him. And he sees that Loki has actually eaten the fruit. So you ate it, Loki. Then show me that legendary power. And Harald starts fighting Loki and he slashes Loki. And Loki doesn't even think too much about it as he just casually swipes Harald aside as if he's nothing, sending him flying into a nearby wall. And we see Harald get up, and we see that whatever Loki is, which some of you have told me what he could possibly be due to the ties of who he is and Norse mythology. There's a lot of assumptions on what type of devil fruit form he may have. I think it's Vilderfolner. Wiederfolner. I'm trying to say that. I'm trying to say the right word, but I think it's Wiederfolner. I'll have to look it up again. Viddelfolner. I have to look it up again. But he just casually tosses and slashes Harald into the distance of the castle. And Harald gets up, and we see the damage that Loki's inflicted on him. Gigantic gash wounds. But Harald can easily regenerate from this. So there's that. There's that advantage. But what happens next is Harald gets absolutely bodied and beaten down by Loki over and over and over and over and over again. To the point where Harald can't really combat this at all. He can't really fight this. And it shows Loki's shadow as he's holding Harald literally by the head. And then Loki's done as he proceeds to go back to his normal human state. Oda, ever the master of cliffhangers, won't show us what Loki looks like. Exactly. But Loki gets back into his human state, carrying Ragnir. Ragnir now being his brand new hammer to replace the one that he smashed against Ragnir. And then he swings his hammer, and the same trademark lightning that accompanies people using Conquerors specifically starts to follow the hammer as he's preparing to swing it. And that's when Harald, who apparently in this moment is able to, think clearly, goes, "I knew it. Loki, you possess the blood of the Supreme King." And then Loki stops because Harald is back to normal again. "Hey, are you back to your senses now?" "Only for the moment. Don't be mistaken. Look around us. There is no undoing what I've already done." "But you were being controlled." "Not exactly. I suspect that my very thoughts are being influenced by someone else. I'm beginning to think of myself as a god. I know that you will do an admirable job of pulling Elbaf in your wake. Make sure you get along with your brother. Just so you know, you're scum of the earth." And mind you, this is Shanks, and he's also sitting a fair distance away from Jarl as well, who's still, still suffering the injury of having a sword literally stabbed straight through his head. "Forcing your son to end your own life? Even the lowest excuse for a father wouldn't do that. There's one other thing I forgot to say. Thank you for what you did for Ida." "Why?" "Burning down the brewer's village won't bring her back, but I'm grateful that you felt that way." And mind you, he's saying this because his arm has not fully regenerated and the mark hasn't come back. Which many of us assumed the reason why he's capable of keeping his thoughts at the moment is simply because the covenant that's seared into his arm is a direct link for his body to basically be overridden by the will of Emu. Without that mark, he's able to return to his senses because the connection is severed. But by regenerating it and the mark, he's now susceptible to being taken over by Emu once again. And then he just taps himself on the shoulder going, "Now hurry before the control takes over again." And then Loki brings his hammer backwards, still charged up with Conquerors. "I'll never forgive you for this. How dare you force me to do this dirty work?" And he starts bringing his hammer ever closer to Harald's face. And then Harald just smiles and goes, "I love you too, son." And then it shows, and here's something I did not notice when I looked at this chapter the first time. This is probably in the anime when this moment happens. And I'm saying this way before we even get to Elbaf. We got until April until the anime comes back. I imagine the panel shows that the hammer is within an inch of Harald's chest, and there's a spark of lightning going between it. I imagine the anime is going to animate it in a way where it goes in slow motion. There's no sound. And then the only sound that happens is when the hammer gets close enough to Harald's chest, that spark of lightning will spark, And then it'll cut to the outside. The bolt of lightning, which is happening in the panel now, comes down. And then we get this gigantic explosion of a hit as Loki fully obliterates the body of Harald. That's what I'm saying the anime is going to do for this specific scene. Mind you, it is going to be a while before we ever see this scene, because we still got to go through the history of Harald, which then gives us the history of rocks. So it's going to be a while, but I'm saying this on the 31st of January at 4:35 p.m. That is how they're going to do this scene in the anime. There's not going to be any music. Spark of lightning between the hammer and his chest. Then the bolt of lightning comes down, and Loki just hits Harald, and his whole body gets blown apart. And that's when we end the episode with Loki crying after basically essentially killing his father. And here in the chapters we have Loki crying as he basically, and when I say obliterate his body, it means that Harald's body is literally being blown to pieces. Just being blown to pieces as he's being hit by, the invisible force that precedes a Conqueror's hockey hit, along with the lightning that's empowering Ragnar as well. But Harald is saying, Loki, my son, all that matters is Elbaf's future, as Harald literally crumbles to pieces, unable to regenerate, at least in this instance. And this is essentially the end of chapter 1170. So onwards to chapter 1171. Chapter 1171, Ragnar. We basically have the aftermath of the battle after Harald has been permanently subdued, has been killed. And that's something else as well. We are witnessing a person who's essentially immortal die. Not in the sense that Saturn did. He literally had his immortality ripped away from him. But in the way that Loki did it, he essentially just straight up ignored the immortality of this individual and hit Harald directly, and just made it so that even that immortality he was granted wouldn't be enough to bring him back. Like I said, and I went on a whole rant about it, hockey really is the best and most powerful thing in all of One Piece. See, it's one thing to have a hammer that can call down lightning whenever you want, but to be able to infuse it with conquerors, which can then shoot that lightning through your target, bypassing your just straight up ability to be immortal from everything, and then you die, was probably not something Imu was thinking they would see. Which also brings me to another thing. I love the fact that Imu actually speaks about what happens, knowing that the connection to Harald is severed, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So, we begin chapter 1171 with the castle being quiet. We see the results of the carnage that we would see when we first got to this castle, when Rodo took Luffy and Nami and everyone else to the castle for the first time, when we met Gabin for the first time after all these years. We see the fresh aftermath of the ruins we would see later on, with Gabin saying, I had a terrible vision, plain as day, of Harald venturing forth from this castle and laying waste to the world until it was nothing but ruins. It's hard to imagine, with the way his wounds healed themselves, that there was actually a means to stop him. So, here's the thing. Him saying this, does this mean that Scopper Gabin has future sight as well? Or is he just saying, I had a terrible vision, plain as day, of Harald venturing forth from this castle and laying waste to the world until it was nothing but ruins? Could it just been like a premonition? Not really a premonition, but just a thought of what would have happened if Harald actually got outdoors. I don't want to assume and say like, oh, everybody has future sight. I'm just throwing that out there. But I also want to acknowledge that it could just be him musing that of what could have happened. Not necessarily he saw it happen, but just him saying that this is what could have happened if he got out. So I'm not going to assume that he has future sight because some people think that many of us reactioneers give out people having conquerors and powers like they're candy, but it's the one thing to acknowledge, but also say that it could not be that in the case in the same way. So, it's hard to imagine with the way his wounds healed themselves that there was actually a means to stop him. And as he's saying this, we see all the destruction that Harold has brought upon the castle. All these guards that he's killed, people who looked up to him, people who followed him from country to country to preach about how the giants are here to help and how they're not here to basically be the same giants from the past. Hold on, let me mute because I got Warframe on and the Lotus will be talking in the background. These are guards who had trusted Harold with their very lives. And many of these individuals who were on the ship where they were traveling probably met their end here. You got soldiers dead all over the place, including the room that Rodo and Luffy and company would come across, and it would just be nothing but bones still in their armor. So these men would still they would be left here. They wouldn't be buried. They would just be left here for years until nothing but their bones remained. Does the treasure of Elbaf really have such power, Jarl? And Jarl says, not that I have heard, but it chills my spine to think of what might have happened had Loki not been here. And then Shanks is thinking back to when he spoke to Harold before. Once I am the Knights of God, dawn will come to Elbaf. And he's thinking back to how happy Harold was. How, and I still say it, he was naively happy. So tunnel-visionedly happy about the prospects of what could happen if he joined with the world government, not realizing that he was being used the entire time. And then it cuts to Garling, a little bit older, a little bit more of a pointy beard, and the sides of his hair is, still spiky, but it doesn't get out to here when he's an older man, going, "Speak your desire, and whatever it is, you shall have it. You've been so deprived, my poor son. Those miserable peons are not people. Forget what happened in the lower world." And then it cuts to Shanks, who's gripping onto his arm, which just so happens to be the left arm that he also has a covenant mark on. Mind you, he doesn't have one to the level of Harold, so he's pretty much safe from being under Imu's influence, and that's probably one of the reasons why he prefers to be in the lower world than the higher one, simply because if you are within range of Imu, and you have, what was it? The, Shallows. If you have the Shallows covenant, then if you are within reach of Marijois, you are unable to disobey Imu. But if you leave, you're fine. If you have a Depths covenant, then no matter where you are, you can still be affected by Imu because the connection is deeper. And then the Abyss, we don't even know to the extent of what an Abyss covenant does, though it can be surmised that the Elders are the ones who have an Abyss covenant, but we don't even know the fullest extent of the benefits of the Abyss covenant, simply because the Depths covenant has everything we've already seen thus far, such as immortality and even greater strength. If anything, I'd say that the Abyss covenant is so much more, a much deeper connection to Imu, that it allows Imu to basically take over your entire body. Not like influence your thoughts. Depths allows Imu to influence your will with their own. But the Abyss, I want to say the biggest thing about the Abyss is that it allows Imu to take direct control over the person with the Abyss Covenant. As such is the case with Gunko, I believe. They both have Abyss Covenants. And I believe that the same can be said for the Elders as well, because we saw Imu take over Saturn when Imu decided to take matters into their own hands during the God Valley incident. So I want to say the Abyss Covenant allows Imu to take over your body just directly regardless of where you are, considering Elbaf is probably a very far off distance from Marijois, and it's just so easy for Imu to take over Gunko, assume direct control, and have access to their powers on top of Gunko's powers. That's a scary thing when you think about it. Let's think about this for a sec. If Imu's powers are devil fruit in nature, this will be the first time that a devil fruit allows a user to take over control of another person's body and have access to their devil fruit powers whenever they want on top of their own. This would be like Doflamingo taking control of someone with Parasite String and then making that person use their devil fruit powers. It's not like Luffy latching on to someone and then manipulating their movements because he can't make them use their devil fruit powers per se. He can't make them use their devil fruit powers in that manner. So with Emu being able to take over a person that already has a devil fruit while also using their own powers on top of that person's devil fruit in conjunction, because using Gunko, they are able to use Gunko's arrow powers, keeping the Straw Hats still bound up, and also using the arrows to inflict wounds on the giants before using Domi Reversi on them. What is Emu's Devil Fruit power? That's the thing, Saba. We don't know if it even is a Devil Fruit power. That's the reason why I said if. That's the reason why I said if. Because we don't know what depth, what power this is from Emu. If it's Devil Fruit based, then it is an incredibly powerful one. Being able to, because think about this. We have a lot of Devil Fruits that can do a whole lot. Ian, hello, welcome. We have a lot of Devil Fruits in One Piece that can do a whole lot of supernatural things, but we don't have many Devil Fruits that are capable of permanently giving people abilities as overpowered as instantaneous regeneration from any injury you suffer, and giving that person even more strength. We don't see many Devil Fruits that can bestow new abilities to people. This would be like Apocalypse from Marvel Comics, giving people mutant powers and then empowering them. Those powers now are those persons now. Those powers are theirs now. Power bestowment. That is literally what Emu's fruit power can do. I'm not going to say it's a fruit because we don't even know if it even is a devil fruit. And I put this idea in the head of, I put this idea out there. Like, it would be crazy if the powers that Emu have are not even devil fruit based and they're just something else entirely. It'd be funny. It'd be terrifying, because that means that these powers go beyond devil fruits. And I've said this for many months, if I want to say a year or so. I want to say I said this for like over a year. That it'd be scary if Emu's powers are not devil fruit based, but they are indeed something else entirely. Now, we don't know fully what Emu's powers are, but they are clearly demon based. Clearly. There's a heavy demonic theme to everything that Emu does power-wise. Possession, overruling of thoughts. And mind you, when you think about it, it's very demonic in nature when you think about Emu's powers, simply because everything that revolves around Emu has to do with, like, summoning circles and summoning things and summoning objects and using grimoires and dark themed abilities and powers that you see, being able to give someone power, but in exchange you give me your soul. I will give you immortality and insurmountable strength, but you give me your entire life and will. For a certain amount of years, you can gain an enormously immortal body and an enormously powerful body. You can gain immortality and strength that you could never have dreamed of. But I will always be that little voice in the back of your mind telling you to do exactly what I want you to. And if you don't, well, I'm gonna have to force you to do what I want. And mind you, Emu is literally the antithesis of anything good in this world. They have no good intentions. They simply want to rule and do not care who they trample in order to do so. Domi Reversied. When people get Domi Reversied, they get flipped around and turned into an ancient giant, into basically demon versions of themselves. Not just ancient giants, because that just applies to giants. We've seen this happen. We saw it happen to Rox's family. We saw it happen to Rox. People who get Domi Reversied are just turned into demons, unable to resist the will of Emu. They gain giant wings. They gain horns. They gain fangs. Their eyes glow with an ethereal, evil glow. They only exist to serve Emu and cause chaos and destruction. This Emu is literally a devil. So I say again, it would be crazy if Emu's powers are not even devil fruit based. Because if it is a devil fruit, then Blackbeard saying that his fruit is the most evil would not hold any weight anymore. The Yami Yami no Mi being seen as the most evil devil fruit of all would not hold weight in comparison to Emu's fruit, where it's literally the power of demons. So that's why I said everything that I said. All this evil. And Shanks is just thinking about just the lives of how the celestial dragons and the god knights see people. It's too much for him. He can't stand it. And he's just gripping onto his arm in shame and anger. And Gavin is like stopping him. Hey, Shanks, no, stop it. That's your bad habit again. Don't you dare regret your birth. And then Shanks is screaming, going, but why did Harald have to die? He was too pure-hearted to deserve that. If only I'd... It's not your fault and you know it. You still have a role to play, Shanks, I guarantee it. Everyone's life has meaning, but you have to keep a level head. This is what he gets for loving his country? And it shows Loki still lamenting and still crying as he's sitting right next to Harald's body, which, considering it was completely obliterated and blown to pieces, the immortality is no longer in effect, and the remains of Harald are now covered up with a gigantic pool of blood just pooling out from his body, showing that when Loki surpassed that immortality and Harald's body just got blown to chunks, it was gruesome. Yeah, I mean, he bled out completely. And it's not like him bleeding out is what killed him. No, I mean, I want to imagine having your entire torso blown apart is a pretty substantial way of making sure that that person does not bother you the next day you see him at work. I'm just saying. But this is where we see Harald's body covered up in his cape. And what is left of him it's sitting in a pool of blood with him going, it's a cruel joke. And then, well, with Shanks going, it's a cruel joke. And then we cut to Marie-Joie, and we learn so much with this one. And then Emu speaks to the elders in the empty throne room. That was an exceedingly rare ancient giant warrior, given even greater power and an immortal body. That was nothing short of a monster, and thou sayest it was killed? By whom? What is an Elbaf? And mind you, the thing to pay attention here is Emu is breathing heavily here. I don't think out of frustration of finding out that one of their greatest pawns is pretty much dead now, but also we find out why Emu is probably breathing heavily. But the elders speak. We shall have it investigated. Harald's abyss in Elbaf remains intact. Enough! It will only be the death of more knights. Performing the covenant inflicts a cost upon Mu as well. And it shows that whenever Emu puts these covenants on people, it comes at a cost to them. We don't know the extent because we don't even know the basis of their power. Fruit-based or something truly supernatural in nature above all. We don't know. But we do know that there's a drawback to it. The first time we ever witness a drawback to it. When a person is given a covenant by Emu, it costs Emu something that causes them to basically breathe heavily as if they have no energy whatsoever. Performing the covenant inflicts a cost upon Mu as well. Harald chose to debase himself before humankind, to connect his country to other lands and peoples. This made him a heretic. His are a tribe of warriors, whose every drop of blood calls out for battle. Carelessly incorporating them into the government will lead to eternal collapse. An ancient giant king of Elbaf who agrees to the covenant is a gift to Mu, the likes of which shall not be seen again. Because Loki definitely ain't gonna be trying to join up with the God Knights and the world government after what they did to his father, whom he actually loved dearly. Ain't no way. And see what came of it. History does not lie. Our kinds are incompatible. Never forget that Elbaf is D. Now, when Emu said this, I'm wondering, what do you mean by that? What you talking about, Willis? What you talking about? What you mean Elbaf is D? You gonna need to elaborate for me. What you mean? What you mean Elbaf is D? So that confused me, but I'm like, wait, what do you mean Elbaf is D? There is so much we don't know because the only D we know of that exists within Elbaf is Jaguar D Sol. But Jaguar D Sol doesn't even come from Elbaf. So the question is, we haven't encountered anyone with the D in their name that comes from Elbaf. And I want to say specifically, we haven't seen anyone in Elbaf since we've been there who carries D in their name that is natively from there. So what do you mean? The nation of Elbaf, an entire nation is D? But we haven't seen a single native D in Elbaf? So that means that Elbaf's meaning in never forget that Elbaf is D, it means that the country itself has ties to Joy Boy, the likes of which we probably haven't seen. That's my assumption. My assumption is that something about Elbaf beyond the giants designates them as D in the eyes of Emu that probably predates the giants, and I'm just saying this as an assumption. Probably predates the giants. Something that happened 800 years ago, who knows? Maybe it was something that went through the first world, or maybe it was something that went through the second world before the world started to get covered in water. Maybe it was something during that time. We don't know. There's so much we don't know, but I can't wait to learn. But continuing, Emu says, never forget that Elbaf is D. Then we cut back to Elbaf with Shanks, Gavin, and Jarl talking to Loki, going, Loki, this news will lead to great unrest in the kingdom. And Loki says, I'm going out to sea, Gramps. I'll take all the surviving guards with me. And what of Harald's wishes? With Harald saying, tell the people of Elbaf exactly what happened here. You know I can't tell them. Listen closely. Don't speak a word of what happened here to anyone. Jarl going, do you understand who they'll blame for it? How's that any different than usual? Do you really see a future where I become king and carry on my old man's ideals? But there are other ways I can live up to him. I'll take the powers I have and go avenge my dad and his soldiers. And Loki gets up because he's preparing to leave, with Jarl trying to protest. Now you're talking nonsense, Loki. The world government is a colossal organization. It's a task far beyond anything you can imagine. But the day we see the world go up against the world government is probably going to be one of the most beautiful sights in all of One Piece. But Shanks and Gavin are silent during this whole conversation. And then we get the castle being opened up. It's still snowing. My goodness, it's still snowing. It hasn't stopped all day. It has not stopped all day. But it cuts to the castle during that time where people manage to get inside going, a disaster! Terrible misfortune! Aura's castle has been attacked! Your Majesty! And that's when we finally leave the flashback and get into the present and make our way down to the underworld. So I sailed right off the island. I'm sure that by the time you return home, Harudin, I've been fully transformed into Loki the Father Slayer in the public's eye. I certainly did enough to convince them I was capable of it. However, I'm not so far gone that I'd celebrate killing my own dad. I just didn't want everything he did to be undone because of what happened in the end. Or do you still think I should have told the country everything? And Harudin hasn't said anything. He's just been listening. And Gavin says it's all true, Harudin. Do you get it now? I didn't want to have to dredge this all back up. And mind you, Luffy's listening too. Everyone else is just been around, but Luffy and company have just been close listening in. I now understand why Chief Jarl argued for your clemency and continued to protect you. In short, Father chose death over the manipulations of the world government. And ever since then, the government has been Elbaf's enemy. How did they manipulate him like that? As a matter of fact, these newly arrived Holy Knights of God played a pivotal role in Harald's story, but Loki still doesn't know exactly what happened to Harald. In the Holy Land, but Loki still doesn't know exactly what happened to Harald in the Holy Land. But if you need more details, I can explain. And then Harudin's all like, nah, we don't need any more. That won't be necessary for now, Mr. Ya. I don't need a reason to protect my homeland. And it cuts to every member of the new Giant Warrior Pirates, Gerd, Rodo, Stenzen, Harudin, Goldberg, and then it cuts to Zoro and Sanji. And Harudin undoes the last chain connecting to Loki, pretty much prohibiting him from using his Devil Fruit powers. If we see eye to eye about anything, Loki, it's love for our father. Allow me to apologize for that, if nothing else. Now fight with me, for Elbaf's sake. And then Loki's just looking at his now freed hand, and Luffy's all like, yeah, way to go, Loki, now you can fight! And then something is screaming, falling down to the underworld, and it lands with a ginormous kadoom in the distance while everyone's looking. And it's literally one of the sleeptids of Killingham, being a Draugr sleeptid. And some people are screaming, more than likely it's Chopper who's screaming. That's it, that's what's raging up above. There's a whole bunch, that's Chopper going, that's it, that's what's raging up above. There's a whole bunch of them. Where did it come from? Is that a Draugr? But those aren't real. And Loki's already smiling, going, sounds like the perfect warm-up. You go on ahead. I can fly up. So, this kind of caught my attention too, because Loki said he can fly. Loki said he can fly. So that makes me wonder, just what exactly is Loki? So Harudin goes with the Giant Warrior Pirates, and they're preparing to go up the elevator to get back to the top of the Sun World, to get back up to the Sun World in Elbaf. And then all the Giant Warrior Pirates are saying, like, we used to think you were a real jerk who killed his own father. Sorry about that. And Harudin lastly screams, but only for this one thing. All of your many other crimes still don't count. And Loki's all like, just shut up and go. No one asked you to say all of that. And then then Loki gets up and he starts stretching. He starts stretching like I should be doing right now. He starts stretching and screaming, going, this is amazing. I can move again. I'm free. And then Luffy is on Loki's leg, and he starts running up his leg, and he's laughing to himself, while Chopper continues to look on. And then Gabin notices Chopper and goes, hey, ship doctor, I appreciate your help here, but I'm concerned about my son. All right, sure. And Sanji helps out both Chopper and Gabin get back up to the top, where Colin and the rest of the Straw Hats are, while Luffy and Loki are still in the underworld. And Luffy wants to stick around to see just how Loki can fight. 'Cause Loki's all like, what are you doing up here? I want to see how you fight. All right, then, show off your power, Ragnir! And then the hammer responds going, and Loki jumps in the air. And then, all of a sudden, instead of lightning coming from the hammer gets coated in ice. In cold, in snow, in cool, and Loki uses a move called Nibelheim and proceeds to flash freeze this sleeptid instantly. Much to Luffy's shock, with him going, what? So now that begs the question, what other elements is Ragnir capable of using? But that is the end of chapter 1171 and all the chapters that we got of One Piece in January. I need to see how much progress has been made with the snow. Oh my goodness. Wow. That is a lot of snow. That is a lot of snow I'm going to be shoveling. Okay. But that's all the chapters that we got in January. And I have to say, I'm happy with what we got. Sure, we had a whole bunch of breaks. But I'm glad with what we got because this chapter basically snow likely to continue over the next several hours. Great. Great. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. More snow over the next several hours. I'm so glad we have a sturdy home where all this snow won't affect our roof or anything of that nature. I'm glad we're good. But all the chapters that we got in One Piece in January, I thought were good. Even though there was just two of them, and I feel like we don't need to always have like 4 chapters a month due to the fact that I want Oda to rest. All right, I like for Oda to rest. Sure, we're getting a chapter tomorrow, tomorrow is the 1st of February, and also the first chapter of One Piece in February, which means we're going to be having even less chapters. If we don't go on a break in February, we can expect at least 4 chapters. But if we do go on break, we could possibly see another 2 chapters drop. That could be the case here, since February is so short. But with the chapters we got in January, I'm happy with both. We saw the end of Harald, as sad as it was. We see that with Conqueror's Haki, you are even capable of surpassing and getting past immortal beings to the point where you're fully capable of killing them. We've seen immortal people just straight up injured with users of Conquerors, but we haven't seen one killed by the use of someone using Conquerors. Mind you, Rox was beaten into submission by critical Conquerors, but wasn't killed by Conquerors. He was killed by Garling. Like his last breath, he was just basically silenced by Garling because he was just beaten into submission by Roger and Garp. But here, with Loki basically killing Harald, this is our first immortal person that wasn't killed by Emu, that was killed by someone with just Haki. And also the powers of Ragnir as well. Still need to be explained with that, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But now we are done with this flashback. We don't exactly see Loki's devil fruit in full display, but we do know it has a capacity of flight, and it was able to just basically trivialize Harald as if it was nothing. And even after, the thing to take note here is when Harald was trying to fight Loki, he slashed Loki in the chest. However, Loki didn't bleed out, nor did he die or anything. Obviously, he didn't die. But the next time we see Loki and he's transforming back into his human state, there is no scar present across his chest. There's no gaping wound on his chest. So whatever this form is affords him the capacity to not only resist these attacks, but also minorly regenerate from them to the point where he can go back to being a normal human in his human state, and those scars and those wounds mean nothing. That's essentially what we have here. So, with us being back in the present, and now Loki has showcased a brand new ability with Ragnir called Nibelheim, which instead of him being able to use lightning, whenever he slams his hammer on something, lightning strikes that spot. An enormously large bolt of lightning that could easily, I want to say, could easily be compared to Eneru's El Thor when you think about it. Like when I'm trying to remember, does it have a specific name when he tried to bring down lightning on Connie when she tried to explain everything? I'm trying to remember. I don't think it I think it had a name, but I'm remembering it incorrectly. I think so. But that lightning basically has the same whiff and look as Eneru's lightning when he tries to just basically zap people who displease him or speak out against him. This is Loki just using his hammer, and he's doing this anytime he wants to. But apparently, Ragnir is capable of channeling other elements as well. And one of the things I brought up is, what if Ragnir has different elemental effects that are in direct reference to the 9 realms of Yggdrasil? Svartalfheim, what is it? Muspelheim, Nibelheim. What is it? Niflheim. Hold on. All right. So, Vanaheim, Jotunheim, Alfheim, Muspelheim, Niflheim, Svartalfheim, and Helheim. But this one is called Nibelheim. So yeah, then of course Asgard, Midgard, Vanaheim, Jotunheim, Alfheim, Muspelheim, Niflheim, and Svartalfheim, and Helheim. Those. So we have Nibelheim, but I wonder if we have other abilities that are referencing the other 9 realms as well. And also, given the fact that Ragnir has existed for centuries, I truly wonder how long it's been around. Has it been around as long as Joy Boy has? Because if that's the case, this is probably, like the Nika fruit, one of the oldest devil fruits in existence that hasn't seen a user up until this point. Joy Boy was an individual from 800 years ago. And ever since then, the world government has tried to get their hands on that fruit, but no one has ever been able to, keep it in their grasp. And when it got to the world government, when Who's Who was delivering it, that was the closest they ever got, because that fruit was taken by Shanks. And when Shanks took it, Luffy ate it, and that is the first person to ever wield the powers of Nika in 800 years. So, with Harald telling us that no one in centuries has been able to wield that fruit because they were never chosen by Ragnir, it stands to reason that it possibly has the same. Actually, no. This fruit found a user sooner than Nika did, because Shanks wouldn't, lead his pirate crew until much later on. He wouldn't come across Luffy until much later on in life. This would be before he loses his arm. This would be before he loses his arm. So the user of this devil fruit, the gap in between them, this is just something minor. Allow me, just let me run with it. This is the shortest in terms of how long it's been since this fruit has been used, because I'm just making an assumption here that maybe it hasn't been used since Joy Boy's time. I'm just saying. It hasn't been used since Joy Boy's time. But it also found its user sooner than Nika's fruit, because Luffy wouldn't get it until like many years later. So that's actually interesting. So that would mean that the Nika fruit has had the longest period, possibly the longest period of time before it ever got into the hands of another user. Basically 800 years. Whereas Loki's devil fruit got found sooner because he had his hands on it. Sorry, it was just a little amusing there. So I find that interesting. And now we have Luffy and Loki just side by side while Luffy's watching how Loki fights. And now, in the next chapter, hopefully we get to see the effects of just how strong and capable Loki actually is, and find out what his devil fruit is called. Now, I need, let's see. Yeah, Vederfolner. That's the name. Okay. That's what it's called. All right. So many people have assumed that Loki is actually Vederfolner. In Norse mythology, Vederfolner, Old Norse Stormpale, Wind-Bleached, or Wind-Witherer, is a hawk sitting between the eyes of an unnamed eagle that is perched on top of the world tree Yggdrasil. The unnamed eagle is attested in both the Poetic Edda, compiled in the 13th century from early traditional sources, and the Prose Edda, written in the 13th century by Snorri Sturluson, while Vederfolnir is solely attested in the Prose Edda. In both the Poetic Edda and the Prose Edda, the squirrel Ratatoskr, which could be the link with Ragnir being with Loki and could be a sign of what Loki actually is, carries messages between the unnamed eagle and Nidhogger, the worm that resides below the world tree. Scholars have proposed theories about the implication of the birds. So, it stands to reason that Loki could actually be Vederfolnir. That could be his devil fruit power. But I'm just saying this is purely conjecture and just assumptions on just the strong ties of Norse mythology that we have that permeates basically throughout this entire arc. But overall, for January, I just think that this has been a great time for One Piece, even though we got 2 chapters. It sets up what is probably going to be an incredibly eventful year for the series. Mind you, we got the One Piece live action season 2 dropping this year. We have the One Piece anime going officially seasonal in April of this year. And we have us finally going back to the present day, which means we get to see how we get out of Elbaf and, well, how we continue with the events of Elbaf and what that could mean for the future moving away from Elbaf this year as well. Because I honestly feel like we're not going to spend this entire year in Elbaf. We're not. And that's the scary part. Where do you go after Elbaf? Elbaf has been teased for so long. We've talked about Elbaf. They've talked about Elbaf. We've always wondered what it's like on Elbaf. When Elbaf was first mentioned, we're all like, oh, we need to go there. We need to see it. The anime teased us with just like sounds of music, sweeping hills, glistening waters, wonderfully white-tipped mountain peaks. We've seen all of this. Now the scary thought is, when we get through the events of Elbaf, where do you even go from here? There's so many things going on in the world of One Piece that we may need to cut to, like what's going on with the Cross Guild. Crocodile, Mihawk, and Buggy, how are they proceeding with the Cross Guild still going on? You know, the whole pirate source bounty hunting service where they are having them hunt down members of the Navy for profit? Then we gotta think about everyone else. Blackbeard. We gotta think about Blackbeard running into Caribou and what information is being given to him. And also what happened to Law. Is Kid fully gone? What truly happened to Kaido and Big Mom? Did they officially perish inside that volcano? It'd be crazy if we see someone using a devil fruit of both Big Mom and Kaido in the future, and that just straight up means that they are dead and their devil fruits went into circulation. We need to know what's going on with the revolutionaries. Where did Lafitte go? Lafitte has not returned to Pirate Island in quite some time. What's going on with Garp? How is Blackbeard going to use Garp as a bargaining chip to create his own nation and then get affiliated with the world government so that pirates can be officially recognized on the island? There's so many things going on here. The revolutionaries, them moving forward because of Vegapunk's message, and how crazy the world is going to be once people start really taking Vegapunk's message seriously about the seas rising, and therefore putting everyone who resides on islands that were normally untouched by water are now having the threat of them eventually getting consumed by it, fighting for land that is high up, high elevation, that can save them. That's going to happen. There's so many loose ends that need to be tied up. What is the strongest fruit? There isn't one strongest fruit. All of them are incredibly powerful. Now, some of them are said to be some of the strongest of their classes, like the Quake fruit is said to be the strongest paramecia due to its ability, but that doesn't mean it's the strongest fruit. There is no one fruit that is the strongest out of everyone's. There's a lot of fruits that are stronger than others, but we have yet to see a single fruit where it outclasses every single person's. Now, some people may say Luffy's fruit simply because he operates in the world of Toon Force, and there's literally nothing stronger than Toon Force other than God. And, well, Luffy is both. Luffy is both a god and a god of Toon. He's literally a Toon Force god. So some people would say that Luffy's devil fruit is quite ridiculously powerful. However, is it the strongest? I would say no. It is the most ridiculous, but not necessarily the strongest. There's no fruit in One Piece that is seen as the epitome of all devil fruits. There's a lot of strong ones, but not a single one where it's like, this is the most sought after devil fruit, this is the most powerful devil fruit. this is the one you absolutely want to get your hands on if you want to be the strongest everywhere. There's not a single fruit in One Piece that is like that. There's a lot of strong ones, but not a single one that is stronger above all else. None that we've seen. So there isn't one. But overall, with everything that's going on in One Piece, I'm glad Oda is not really dragging things out too long. Because that was something that was kind of prevalent with Egghead a little bit. That was something that was definitely prevalent with Wano. And I'm glad, and some people have said, like, I feel like he's rushing a little bit. Some people have said that, but I feel like, no, he's not rushing. He's just ready to get everything. He's just ready to show us everything. That's the reason why he took that 6-month hiatus, to finalize the final saga and get everything done. It's not like he needs to take a break to mess with the story a little bit. He's done. What we're getting is the final cut of the series. What we're getting is the final draft, the official one, the last bit of information for One Piece before the series ends. We're in the final saga of One Piece, the final saga. There isn't one after this one. When this saga and all of its arcs are done, One Piece is done. I don't know what the world's going to be like when One Piece is over, but that's a far ways off, considering how long these arcs, even onto themselves, tend to last. But what I like is that Oda is finally giving us information. Good information. Information for us to just hang on to, especially if we go on break. I'm grateful that he's getting all these episodes, not episodes, but chapters out to us. But I'm also glad that when he takes breaks, that means he gets to rest a little bit more. I'm grateful for that, because I'm not going to be of the mind where I'm like, well, I'm sad that he took a break because I want to see more. I would like to see more, yes, but I care about the health of the author way more than I care about a new chapter coming out every single Sunday. If it's at the expense of an author's health, I don't want the chapter. Plain and simple. I don't want the chapter if the author's health is put at risk because of it. Just trying to get it out for the sake of getting it out. I'd rather we go on many breaks if it means Oda is capable of operating at tip-top form. I'd rather have that. But I'm glad that we're getting these chapters the way that we are. The pacing is going a lot smoother. I want to say the pacing is smoother than it's ever been, ever since Oda came out of this break. And I'm grateful to see where One Piece is going to go. But that's pretty much all I have to say about today's reflections. Thank you, everyone who stopped by. I gave my thoughts. You guys let me know what you thought of these chapters of One Piece Day, either in chat or in the comments down below if you're watching this later. But I know that I'm having a wonderful time with One Piece, and the first month of the year is about to be over in, I want to say 6 hours and 30 minutes. 38 minutes. 6 hours and 38 minutes. The last day of the first month of the year is about to be over, and we're going to move into February. And that is going to be very, very interesting. And we'll see what February has to hold for us for One Piece, and I can't wait to see what Oda has in store. And that's going to happen tomorrow, because the newest chapter drops then. So to everyone, to Saba, to Ian, to Julian, everyone else who tuned in here today, I just want to say what an immense honor and privilege it is to be your entertainer. All I can say to you is, hope you all enjoyed. Can't wait to see you all in my next video. Like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. Even check out the Patreon, because I am always looking forward to entertaining you. And because I know you're coming back anyway. Have a fantastic day, and once again, as always, later, peoples!